Oh, it's finally here. Chapter 28, the final chapter. Miriam and Charlie, what a treat. It's been quite some journey getting here, hasn't it? So let's get straight into it. Well, I mean, before we do, just those names there, these are anaphoric references, of course, back to earlier in the book. And so we know we're tying up some loose ends here. So there is clearly some structuring and some sequencing and crafting that's gone on here in the editing of this book, and she wants to leave us with that sense of conclusion as best as she can. So, without any further ado, let's get into this one and get it finished.
Chapter 28. Miriam and Charlie. The train back to Berlin passes through Leipzig, and I get off. It's morning. The air is still with a silken warmth that will work itself into something real by midday. Last time, the station was being renovated. It is now part of a 3-story shopping mall in a vast atrium. Escalators move people up and down between levels. Near the exit, there's a display of photographs of the demonstrations 10 years ago. The sign over them reads, Leipzig, City of Heroes. I'm not sure what I'm doing here. I wander through town. Most of the cranes are gone. New facades of buildings in sun yellow and dusty pink, some even gilded, have been revealed from behind scaffolding. I walk past the town hall and past Auerbach's cellar. Next door, a new museum has been inserted into the old streetscape. The Contemporary History Forum, Leipzig.
So there's still narrative progression, although it's interesting that she starts with the train back to Berlin. It's sort of it does suggest coming full circle, but she passes through Leipzig and gets off. Now we know from some of the very early chapters that Leipzig is a destination that she's been heading to and wanting to get to. So it's been seeded earlier on in the book, and now here we are in Leipzig. So there is a sense of destination here. We've finally arrived in this place, this Leipzig. So we've been waiting. There's been withholding of this up until this point. And then let's just have a quick look there. The description here, we've got some quite vivid colour imagery of sun yellow, dusky pink. So these interesting pre-modifiers, dusky pink. So even gilded, so covered in kind of gold leaf or gold covering, gold paint. Sense here of rejuvenation, isn't there, of things being painted and brightened up since its drab GDR past.
The inside is all terrazzo flooring and expensive fittings. This, it turns out, is the federally funded effort to put the history of the separation of Germany behind glass. There are the famous pictures of the wall being built, an Eastern soldier deciding to make a run for it to the west, parting the barbed wire with his hands, and Peter Fechter, the 18-year-old shot trying to escape in 1962 and left to die on the death strip because each side thought the other would retaliate if they went to help him. Someone has thrown him a roll of bandages, but he lies immobile and bleeding. There are pictures of people coming out of a tunnel in West Berlin, the successful group before Frau Paul tried. And there's a grey paddy wagon parked inside here, exactly the same as the one in which she was transported to her trial. A TV monitor shows Karl Edward von Schnitzler in his acidic prime. I come to the 70s and find a glass case with a display of Renft memorabilia. Records, Klaus's old guitar, and pictures of the band, its hairy, bell-bottomed members looking both innocent and louche. I'm the only visitor. The attendants are eager to make eye contact and chat, bored as bats. Perhaps because of all the money poured into this, the things behind the spanking displays look old and crummy, like articles from a time that has been left behind. I slap down the stairs in my sandals. I'm annoyed that this past can look so tawdry and so safe, as if destined from the outset to end up behind glass, securely roped off and under press-button control. And I'm annoyed at myself. What's the problem? Isn't a museum the place for things that are over?
So, unsurprisingly for Funda, we've got this anticlimactic ending. And here she ends up at the museum, the Contemporary History Forum Leipzig. And yet she's disappointed at the fact that this has all been commodified, parcelled up and presented behind glass in the way that it would do in a museum. But she's frustrated at the artificiality of it and how benign and innocent it's made to seem, like anything would seem if you put it under glass and and present it with spotlights on it and, on TV monitors. So there is this sense of anticlimax, which is typical of Funda. She tends to always underplay things and use leitmotifs at times and use bathos and anticlimax at the end of paragraphs, the end of chapters. So it's fitting that she would use it at the end of the book as well.
It's a fair walk from here, but I think I remember the way, so I set off for the Runde Ecke. I hope it's still there, that this slick Western-funded version is not all that remains of East Germany. I know that on the outskirts of town there are the usual socialist high-rises, but here the streets are cobbled and the buildings are grand. Carved faces stare down from the archways over arcades, and a row of caryatid creatures holds up the old theatre.
So that use of personification there, metaphor, carved faces stare down from the archways, trying to humanise and bring the human back into the actual sculptures and the architecture. Even quite fitting, given that the nature of this is sort of being watched and observed. There's a sense here that even these, what are they, gargoyles? Pretty much carved faces, staring down, observing down. So it's quite a fitting metaphor, isn't it, as well?
I pass a music shop. This was the home of Bach. A bistro and a funeral parlour with a surprising range of offerings available. The sign says day and night. Burial, cremation, burial at sea, and anonymous burials are listed, as well as transport of coffins.
So a bit of bathos there as well. We've got the a music shop. That was a weird noise, sorry about that. A music shop, a bistro, and a funeral parlour. So ending there, typically for Funda, with something quite heavy and final as death. So juxtaposing bistros and music shops with funeral parlours. But again, she's only commenting on what is literally there side by side on the street, so it's not necessarily her juxtaposition, but she is presenting it in that way as well. And given that we know Funda's style, it seems right.
A dog walks purposefully along the pavement, and somewhere, I think, a person is lost. Its high-headed confidence makes me smile. A man in a tobacconist's window sees me and smiles back. The building is still there, its vastness covering the block and ending in the round corner where the entry is. When I reach it, I see that the Citizens' Committee's museum still exists, and it's open. Inside me, a small, stretched thing dissolves with relief. I go up the stone stairs. The entry to the exhibition is on the left, and to the Leipzig branch of the Stasi File Authority on the right. Nothing much has changed. I walk down the corridor, past the workroom with the girly calendar, and the cell with its tiny window and bed, to the museum office. There are signs requesting donations for funds to keep the place running. Frau Holitzer's not here today, but yes, a young colleague tells me she still works with the Bürger Committee. I ask him about the new museum in town, and he shrugs and says something about the incompatibility of funding and autonomy. They had tried to negotiate with the federal authorities about having just one museum of divided Germany in Leipzig and one run by Easterners, but it hadn't worked. This museum has been left a smaller, shabbier outfit than the other, but for all that, it's more authentic. Here, in this building, where people were held and interrogated, where upstairs their stolen biographies were filed away. I spent some time in the rooms, seeing the piles of file pulp in one, the moustaches and wigs and glue in another, and the smell sample jars in a third.
So we're back again, in this this museum, and nothing's changed, obviously, but we've got the polysyndeton there of moustaches and wigs and glue. And sorry, I'm just trying to stifle a yawn. Sorry, I've lost track of what I'm saying. Yeah, the moustaches, the wigs, and the glue. The polysyndeton there of the sort of the absurdities of the Stasi, these sort of accoutrements, I would call them, the paraphernalia of the Stasi, the stuff that they had. And the polysyndeton there making it seem even more absurd. The moustaches and wigs and glue. It's sort of, they're all similar. They're all designed to disguise, aren't they? But it's just laughable, like some sort of dressing up shop or a costume department.
For me, this is where it all began. I buy a couple of books from the young man and leave. Outside it is hot. Since morning the trees have deepened their green and are making darker shadows. I have nothing more to do here but wander back to the station. I walk through a small park where people are eating lunch on benches. The air is quiet, apart from birdsong, and the soughing of trams, and a rolling sound behind me getting louder. I turn and 2 boys on skateboards are coming towards me, fast. Before I can decide which edge of the path to keep to, they separate around me in graceful formation, one on each side, then join up again. I watch them glide out of the park. They perform the same manoeuvre on a girl in a phone booth. She keeps talking as she leans out of the box to see them skate on. When I'm near the phone, I find myself looking at the girl. She's wearing a white midriff top and jeans and chewing gum as she chats. I can't hear what she's saying, but she's completely absorbed in it, leaning one heel on her knee into the booth. She's probably 16, which means she was 6 years old when the wall fell. She wouldn't remember a time without telephone boxes. Before I know why I am stopped here, she sees me and nods to let me know she won't be much longer. I'm relieved for a moment to have found a purpose, but I'm stuck now. When she hangs up, she waves and walks to her bicycle. I move to the booth. 16, I think. 16 was when she got on a train from here for Berlin and climbed the wall. That's all I think. But I open my address book at her number and dial. Hello? Miriam? Miriam, it's Anna Funder here. Anna! Where are you calling from? Are you back in Berlin? I'm actually in Leipzig, I say. I thought of you and thought I'd just call to say hi while I'm here. I didn't know if you still had the same number. I've been in Nuremberg and I'm on my way back to Berlin. I'll come and get you, she says. Where are you? Near the station, I think. Okay, I'll be at the side entrance in 10 minutes. I see her come towards me. She's dressed entirely in white, loose pants and a flowing top. She is my height, though finely built. When she hugs me, I feel the wing bones of her shoulder blades beneath my hands. She lifts her sunglasses and her eyes are the same blue, but the lines in her face are much more deeply drawn. I've moved house since you were last here, she explains. We drive over cobbled streets from the station, under elms and plane trees and tram wires.
So this is climactic. This is being reunited with Miriam, the person she's tried for so long to meet with again, and the person who's ignored her calls and left voice messages for, which have been unanswered and unresponded to. And yet here we have this very, very emphatic response, and she comes to get her from the station. And then just a little bit of Polly Sinderton there of the way they travel under elms and plane trees and tram wires. I wonder what plane trees are. I remember seeing that before in one of the earlier chapters and thinking it was a typo. I'll have to look that up. A plane tree. Never heard of a plane tree before. But anyway, the point is that they're sort of moving under all these things. It's almost like it symbolises their past, maybe. They're travelling through not only space but also through time to be together again. And, you know, it's fitting that this should be the last chapter in the book as they get reunited and we learn the rest of what Miriam has to say.
Miriam's is a corner building, beautifully restored. Hand-painted flowers curl up the walls of the grand stairway, and at the back, a discreet steel and glass lift takes us up. Once more, her apartment is on the top level. The living room straddles the corner, and all the windows are open. I move to the sill. Across the street there's another fine building with a glass atrium on its roof, and behind it, a field of grass and trees stretching as far as I can see. That's the Leipzig Heath, she says behind me. It's lovely for a walk. We can go there later if you like. The Leipzig Zoo is there too, which is worth a look. What's that smell? I ask. It could be the big cat enclosure, she chuckles. No, it's sweet. Oh, that's the acacias. She joins me at the window and points to the top of the glorious trees right below us. Cream flowers dangle in bunches like grapes. It's a beautiful perfume, isn't it? She says. More beautiful at any rate than the lions. She laughs and touches my arm. Miriam makes tea and we sit to talk. She doesn't seem surprised by my arrival, or not as surprised as I am to find myself with her. It is as if she always expected us to see one another again, almost like friends. What are a few missed phone calls between friends? The scented air moves gently around us. The apartment has a parquetry floor, pale walls, and a new kitchen at one end of this room. The adjoining room is a large space covered with a deep chalk-coloured carpet. It is lined with books and plants, and there's a computer in the corner, the screensaver on clouds. Everything is white and light and comfortable. I tell Miriam about my travels.
So, extra information there about the computer with the screensaver, but included, I think, because it emphasises that everything is light and comfortable and white, and even the screensaver itself is white, fluffy clouds. So there's a sense of complete freedom. We know that Miriam herself has been described as wearing white, free-flowing clothes. There's a real overwhelming sense of freedom here. You'll see this in. It reminds me a little bit of Gatsby, which you'll be able to think about when you're thinking of Jordan in that scene, in the very hot scene in Gatsby, in that chapter where they're all too hot and they're wearing loose-fitting clothes, and the symbolism of white in that. I think it's Daisy and perhaps Jordan wearing white. Anyway, yes, and so everything's white and light and comfortable. The polysyndeton there emphasising that even more so.
I tell Miriam about my travels, about Stasi men and Julia's schoolgirl ordeal, about kidnappings and babies left on the wrong side of the wall, about Rempft and Professor Mushroom. I tell her I've just come from Nuremberg, where I spoke with the puzzle women, who turned out to be men as well. A few dozen people doing something that will take a very long time. I find I can't say 375 years. Everything in this place, she says, takes a very long time. We are sitting at a glass-topped cane table. Miriam slips her sandals off and rests her feet on its supports. Her hair is still cropped short, but it is now dyed a deep chestnut brown. She wears the same small, round eyeglasses and smiles the same kind and sudden smile, the shadows between her teeth overdefined by nicotine. A very long time, she says again, lighting a cigarette. A breeze comes through, pushing her clothes against skin, revealing again for an instant how slight she is underneath, something I forgot because of her magnificent voice. Miriam works at a public radio station. Recently, she was asked to make a programme on nostalgia parties, where if you show an East German ID, you get in for free. Everyone calls one another comrade, and the beer is only 1 Deutschmark 30 Pfennigs. She says, things like this feed into a crazy nostalgia for the GDR, as if it had been a harmless welfare state that looked after people's needs. Most of the people at these parties are too young to remember the GDR anyway. They are just looking for something to yearn for. Some of the men running the radio station are former Stasi informers, or, in one case, a former Stasi employee. This shocks me, but Miriam shrugs. The old cadre are back in power, she says. She knows that one of them used to pass on listeners' letters of complaint and comments to the Stasi, and he knows she knows. He can't look at me, she says. When she declined to make the nostalgia programme, he said to her, You know what your problem is? Your problem is you don't identify with the culture of the station. Miriam rolls her eyes at the ridiculousness of the former Stasi man recycling Stasi threats, substituting station for nation. The programme was made by someone else and broadcast anyway, feeding into the creeping nostalgia that here takes the place of a sense of belonging. The putt-putt of Vespa motorbikes reaches us from below. The sound makes me think of beachy places, although we are landlocked deep in Central Europe. I ask her what Charlie was like. Well, she says, I haven't sorted all my pictures yet. They are still in that old suitcase. She gets up and goes into her bedroom. I understand perfectly the impulse not to file him away under plastic in an album or in a frame. And suddenly, it is clear to me why the new museum was so irritating. Things have been put behind glass, but they are not yet over. Miriam shows me a couple of old black and white photographs and a Kodachrome colour snap like those from my childhood. I get a shock. This is you, I ask. The photograph is of a young couple seated at a table. I recognise him from the last time. Clear-faced, square-jawed Charlie. He's wearing a top hat but no shirt, larking around. I would not have recognised Miriam. The girl is exquisite, extraordinarily beautiful. She is thin and smooth-skinned, with a chiselled face and a breathtaking smile. She is utterly natural, but she could have come out of any magazine, then or now. That was after our wedding, Miriam says. We went and had lunch. I remember the torn photo. I'm glad she has let herself remain in existence in this one. There's another picture of the two of them, she with her arms around him, looking at the camera. She is an apparition, a naughty angel caught flying over the wall, put in a cage, and then let out, here with her beloved. In the third, a younger Miriam stares solemnly at the camera from under a fringe. She looks about 12.
There's a lot here, isn't there, about appearance and reality, which is fitting for this book, and it's certainly fitting for Funda's fascination and fixation on appearances and reality. So she refers to Miriam as an apparition, a naughty angel. So there's a metaphor there of an apparition, a sort of ghost. And in a way, photographs are like that, aren't they? They're kind of a ghost from the past. They're sort of there, but not really there. And in some ways, when you look at the picture, you can't really remember being that person almost. It's like looking at somebody else. So it's quite a fitting metaphor, but still there's a sense of the past haunting the present here.
"That one was just when I got out of prison," she says. "My grandmother made me that dress." "But you look so young," I say. "I was, I guess," she says. "I was 17.5. I look at her. She has no vanity. She has expected no reaction to the beauty in the pictures. The sun slants in, painting half her face golden. I would never have seen this girl in her. "There's this, too," she says. "I thought of it last time you were here, and I found it afterwards." She passes me a piece of paper folded into quarters. "I don't think I'd looked through that stuff since Charlie died, actually." She breathes in. "It was hard for me to dig up." The page is yellow with age and slightly torn. On one side, there are rows of handwriting in pencil crossed out and started again. On the back, a clean version. "It's a poem of Charlie's," she says. "Can I make a copy?" "Please, just take it," she says. "Send it back to me sometime." "What was he like?" I ask again. She flicks a lighter for flame and leans back in her chair. "Well, he was a sensitive person," she says. "He was quite reserved. He noticed things. He had a good sense of humour, but underneath, I'd say, he took things to heart." She looks out the window, at the sky moving past. "He was individualistic, and an only child. That's why it is so hard for my parents-in-law." Miriam gets up and collects a bowl of cherries from the kitchen. "Our friends thought our marriage was a catastrophe," she laughs, sitting down again. "But for us it was ideal." "Why did they think that?" "Each of us did our own thing, to a certain extent, of course. It might be that one of us would want to go to the cinema and the other wouldn't, so one would just go alone. We thought that was quite normal. Or I remember coming back from being away in Gera and running into Charlie in the corridor. I said, 'Are you coming or going?' He said, 'I'm going out for a bit. See you tomorrow then.'" Voices float up from the street, single notes of human music. "Our friend said, 'But that's no sort of marriage.'"
Bringing us back to the present in that way that she has done so many times before with everyone she's spoken to, these little cutaways back to the person speaking or back to something happening in the present. And here voices float up from the street, which is a metaphor in itself, isn't the idea of voices floating up from the street, but then extended to single notes of human music. So there's something interesting happening here. There's sort of a beautiful quality to the sound of human voices here. She's really glamorizing the humanity, I think, here at this point. And that's not always the case in this book, as we know, but here there's definitely a positive tone here when describing the people and the voices below.
"For us, though, it was the only way we could be. That's why it worked so well." She spits a cherry pip into her hand. "I think it came, at least on my side, from my experience in prison. I reacted extremely when I got out of there. I just couldn't plan ahead. I couldn't say to someone, 'I'll meet you on Sunday.' I found that sort of thing an unbearable obligation." She laughs. "I'm sure I was hard to get on with." I can't imagine her being hard to get on with, but I know she is hard to pin down. And I know, all of a sudden, that she really is pleased to see me, that this is the continuation of a conversation begun 3 years ago. She got my messages and my letter, and from an impulse I now understand, did not tie herself down with a response. Having had her every move anticipated by them for so long, these days she just wants to let things unroll, and my turning up here is part of the unrolling. "After we wrote our applications to leave, things got pretty awful," she says. "They began to harass us on the street. We were constantly stopped. We were followed in the car quite a lot too. They really wanted to make life unpleasant for us. Eventually, Charlie was called into the Department of the Interior for questioning. He said he just wanted an answer to his application, yes or no. That was the first time they locked him up. After he was released, the cards started appearing in the letterbox, calling him in to room 111 at Dimitrovstrasse. Dimitrovstrasse was the police building, but Charlie Weber came to know that room 111 meant an appointment with the Stasi. The complex had an internal yard, and you could walk in thinking you were going to clear up an administrative quirk and suddenly find yourself in a room being interrogated by the Stasi, or even locked up on remand in a cell out back. Miriam pauses. The last time Charlie went in there, he went to his appointment in room 111 and ended up in one of those.
So a euphemism here, room 111 being a euphemism for an appointment with the Stasi or an interrogation with the Stasi. Quite chillingly close to Orwell's room 101, isn't it? which it seems ironic, doesn't it? But this isn't fiction. This is real. But what a strange lack of awareness by the Stasi. Unless it's some ironic joke, but I imagine not.
You wanted to exhume the coffin, I ask. What happened? She unwraps a new packet of cigarettes from its plastic. Her fingers are hard-looking and blue from lack of oxygen. The district attorney's office here just want to cover up everything that happened then. And most of all, they don't want to pursue any of the Stasi. There are a lot of reasons for this, I imagine, but in part it must be because they are still working with people who were with the Stasi. They are their colleagues. The judge, for instance, who signed the warrant for Charlie's arrest that last time he went into remand, is still on the bench. But there has been a development. The DA has found a witness to what happened in the cells the day Charlie died. Another prisoner. According to that person's account, Miriam says, there was a commotion in Charlie's cell early in the morning. Something happened, and the guard called others who came running. Then they all left. The witness says everything was quiet until midday when they came to bring the meal. Then the guard had to call more guards again, and voices were raised in the cell. You'd think this new evidence would give some impetus to the inquiries, but no. The DA later informed me that he'd found another former prisoner who credibly assured him that he heard nothing from the other cells that day. Once more, he wanted to use that as a reason to close the matter. Miriam has lost faith in this investigation. About a month ago, she sent the file and all the correspondence over the years directly to the Minister for Justice. I haven't got an answer from him yet, she says, but I'm waiting. She has an elbow on the armrest and her chin in her palm. And of course there are still the puzzlers, she says. I know for a fact that there were lots of pieces of paper that they didn't even put in the sacks, so they haven't been gathered up and sent to Nuremberg yet. Maybe there's something about Charlie in them. I don't say anything for a moment. Then I ask her what she thinks happened that day in the cell. Charlie was stubborn. I know from when he was in custody before that he would refuse to cooperate, to speak or to go out into the exercise pen. I think maybe he wouldn't answer them or something when they came to his cell in the morning and they roughed him up and he hit his head against the wall. Then they probably left him in the cell, and when they came back at lunchtime, they found him where he'd fallen. He was most likely dead or dying, and that's why they called in the other guards then too. She stubs out a cigarette and keeps stubbing the butt. She is probably right about what happened, but will digging him up reveal anything? Perhaps it might prove whether he died by hanging or not, but at whose hands? Or, if they cremated him, as the file indicates, there will be nothing in the coffin that can tell her what happened, and she will still be here, with only the frail comfort of theories. For now, though, this terrible game of waiting keeps her suspended from her life with Charlie, still in contact. And underneath the need to know is the need for justice. The regime may be gone, but the world cannot be set to rights until Miriam has some kind of justice. Things have been put behind glass, but it is not yet over. We talk into the evening, and eat tomato and basil, prosciutto and melon. Miriam speaks of friends, but she has no partner in life. Too hard, she says sadly, to explain everything. I ask her about her family. Her mother, she says, is a social climber. You'd think that would have been hard under socialism, but she managed to give it a go. She laughs. Her sister is a dentist. You would have seen her office downstairs in this building. I'm glad her sister is close. And your father? My father was a doctor, she says, a very kind man. He died in the early 70s, relatively young. She taps the cigarette packet on the table. Of lung cancer. Oh, but the thing about that is, she says as she exhales, it doesn't take very long at all. Through the double doors into the next room, my eyes catch a doll's china stare. It is an old puppet in a white silky suit, hanging limbs akimbo from its crucifix of strings on the corner of a bookshelf. Miriam asks me to stay and insists on giving me her bed. I wake in the night and need water and air. On the way from the bathroom to the window over the heath, I see her in the moonlight and stop. She is asleep on the floor of the living room, in loose white pyjamas, with a blindfold across her eyes. Her neck is bent and her arms and legs are spread-eagled over a round, flat cushion. She's so slender and crumpled her whole body nearly fits onto it, strings cut, in the spotlight. In the morning...
Extending that metaphor there of the sort of hanging doll, like a puppet, with its legs, with its limbs akimbo, all spread out, and then So is she. So is Miriam there, described as strings cut in the spotlight, as if she is the puppet. And I'm trying to think, is that symbolic? Is it significant? Or am I being an English teacher and looking for meaning where there isn't? Are the curtains just blue? I think it's simply how she looks, isn't it? I don't think she's a puppet of anybody, really. I don't think we could accuse her of that. We could say the Stasi was certainly pulling the strings if we wanted to stretch it that far, but I think here it is literally just that she looks like a marionette that's had its strings cut and has fallen down and sort of crumpled on the floor. So there's a vulnerability there about Miriam, isn't there? She's small in her figure, and she's also vulnerable in her past and what she's had to put up with. And I'll talk about this at the end a bit more, but this is very much one woman's story. And well, we'll come back to this at the end anyway.
Miriam takes me to the station. To my relief, I find a copy shop so I can give Charlie's poem back to her. She comes to the platform and waits till the train moves out, silent and slow. The girl opposite me lip-smacks her puppy. On the platform, an older dog huffs and rearranges itself in jealousy. Then Miriam waves and walks away, straight-backed into the sunlight. I like trains. I like their rhythm, and I like the freedom of being suspended between two places, all anxieties of purpose taken care of. For this moment I know where I am going. We are quickly outside Leipzig, moving past maize and wheat and medieval-looking water towers near each station. Lutherstadt Wittenberg, Bitterfeld, Wannsee. In one field there's a scarecrow equipped for all comers in a black motorcycle helmet. Behind him, a parachutist looks for touchdown. Two boys in a dinghy sit among the reeds in this vast flat sea of improbable green, fishing. I move back from the window, and the puppy finds me suddenly fascinating. It has caught the rustle of paper in my pocket. I take out Charlie's poem. In this land, I have made myself sick with silence. In this land, I have wandered, lost. In this land, I hunkered down to see what will become of me. In this land, I held myself tight so as not to scream. But I did scream so loud that this land howled back at me, as hideously as it builds its houses. In this land, I have been sown. Only my head sticks, defiant, out of the earth. But one day it too will be mown, making me, finally, of this land. I fold it and think of Charlie Weber, now of this land. And I think of Miriam, a maiden blowing smoke in her tower. Sometimes she can hear and smell them, but for now the beasts are all in their cages. I walk home to the apartment from Rosenthaler Platz station. The park is alive, the light so bright it picks out people and their shadows in exaggerated 3D. Sunbathers loll on the grass, some in trunks and some bare-bottomed. There are teenagers removing gum from their mouths to kiss, a sheepdog with a single forelock dyed green, an adolescent cripple in a baby pusher being taken for a stroll. People shake infants up and down to make them calm, and children spin on swings and roundabouts I never noticed were there.
This music's not mine, by the way. I'm not quite sure what's happening.
That was Stasiland by Anna Funder, read by Danica Fairman.
Well, what a thing. What an accomplishment.
This audio program is presented by Audible.com. Audible. Audio that speaks to you wherever you are.
Is that it? Right, lovely. I think it is. Okay, excellent. So there we have it. We've done, and it's strangely anticlimactic, but then not that strange because, you know, what would we expect from Anna Funder anyway? Just on that last page, a little bit. The beasts are all in their cages. Of course, it's a metaphor for the Stasi, isn't it? The Stasi, for now, the beasts are in their cages. For now, the Stasi is being stopped. For now, the past is in the past. But I think also it's referring to her own inner demons, the beasts that she's trying to control herself as much as anything else. And then we're back home again to the apartment, and she sees things in different ways. She's very much in the present tense, how relaxed, how free, so free in fact that the sunbathers are there with no clothes on in some cases, kissing, and then we've got sheepdog with hair dyed green, an adolescent cripple in a baby pusher. What? An adolescent cripple in a baby pusher being taken for a stroll. Okay. People shake infants up and down to make them calm, and children spin on swings and roundabouts. I never noticed were there. So she's now seeing the freedom and the joy and the peacefulness in the place that was once, of course, so controlled and so drab and so paranoid under the Stasi, under the GDR. So what I was going to mention there was that this is Miriam's story, and of course it closes with Miriam and Charlie, but ultimately Miriam, given that Charlie is no longer around. And in a way, Funda had to choose somebody. It's a very big story, isn't it? It involves many, many people. It's too big to look at, really. So it needs to have the individual stories. And so what Funda does is she follows the journey and charts really Miriam's story from beginning to end in terms of the book, and hangs everything else on that narrative. And actually, the narrative isn't very fulfilled. We don't know how Charlie died. We don't get the answers we wanted. But then in a way, isn't that the point? Because Miriam doesn't get the answers either, and the people of the GDR don't get the answers they want. It's just an awful, awful mystery that to this day is still unresolved. And possibly by honing the perspective through only a few select people, and really mainly Miriam, we sort of get a very much more personal account of what happened. And that makes it more hard-hitting, I think, and particularly the tragedy of Charlie and Miriam's suffering. It makes it very powerful. And so I think that narrative choice is a very important one. And you'll want to look at that, I think, and certainly compare that when we look at the other text as well, and see how narrative and perspective is used in that case, and the choices that's been made. So I think here this is a very human story, and Funda's clearly looking for the human. And I've said it before, but the warts and all, the sort of the gritty, the real, everything. It's not just the glamour. It's not even the glamour. It's not the glamour at all. It's very much the real humdrum, banal, mundane, everyday life that these people in the GDR had to live. But what a fascinating book. It's a long time since I've read it. I think I skimmed it when I read it the first time. So to go through it line by line like that is very, very rewarding. But it's a harrowing book as well for its realism. But Funda's narrative style is very, very rich, isn't it? And it gives us plenty to think about when we're shaping up the coursework. So give yourself a pat on the back. You can celebrate. We've finished Stasiland. So I will leave it there for now. And yeah, that's it for Stasiland. We'll look at the next one next time. Bye for now.